I just want to state a point about the the state of movie making and storytelling in Hollywood. The issue has been an ongoing issue that is spanning decades now, and we're at a point where you look at films and you walk away and you're like, what the hell were they thinking? What? How could they screw that movie up? And I have a series that I'm doing called Da Fuck, with DAFUK, and it's all about just taking a movie and what the fuck did you do to screw up this film? Like, why did you screw up this movie? Because it comes down to the story. It all comes down to the story, which these Hollywood studios always seem to not get that idea. They always screw up the idea of getting the story right. It's for whatever reason they come up with some crap script, or they jump into a production without a script, and they just don't take the audience into consideration, and they spend millions of dollars producing this thing, and they throw it out in the theater, and then it bombs, and they go, well, why did it bomb? I guess people don't like this stuff. No, the movie is crap. The story is crap. You've got to start with a good story. We've gone into this culture of, oh, well, we've got to subvert expectations, and we've got to surprise the audience, and maybe we don't give them an ending and they walk out and they have to figure out the ending by themselves. That's bullshit writing. Don't subvert my expectations. Like, if it's marketing 101, if you've got all of these resources that are telling you, hey, this is what the audience wants, fucking give it to them. Don't subvert expectations and then get shocked when they don't fucking like it. That's exactly why Star Wars and Star Trek are right where they're at. They spent all this time, you had literally decades after Return of the Jedi of novelizations, books that they came out with. 20-something years of books that came out after Return of the Jedi. And so you built up 25 years of Star Wars lore. You literally experienced Han and Leia getting married, getting pregnant, having twins. We watched those twins grow up. And spoiler alert, turn it off if you don't want to know. It doesn't really matter now because that whole continuity is scrapped. But, so you watch them grow up. It was Jason and Jaina Solo were Han and Leia's twins. We experienced them grow up through all the novels. Hell, we went to the Jedi Academy with them as they trained as young Jedi at Luke Skywalker's Academy. They grew up fighting against all the evil forces and the Imperial remnants. And then one of them, I won't spoil this part, one of them goes off and becomes a Sith Lord. And then the twin sibling has to go off and fight against. They have to fight each other. See, I won't tell you. I won't tell you all that. If you want to go read the books, go do that. But all of that, we experienced all of that over the course of 20-something years, and then Disney comes in, buys up Lucasfilm, and takes all of that story material and says, nope, we got to throw that out. We can't use that. That's going to make making films really difficult. So Disney went in and rebooted the thing. Mistake number one. Why would you do that? So Disney started over. And of course, that led to a lot of problems with the fan base. And then Disney started producing, quote unquote, replacement material, which essentially they borrowed heavily from what already existed and just totally screwed everything up. So now they're just doing a lot of this catching up, trying to fix the mistake of scrapping the original continuity. They called it the extended universe. And they're just trying to streamline everything and line everything up so that it's palatable by the fans. Don't know how you're gonna fix that, Disney Lucasfilm, but you did a piss poor job of taking the material that was there, that was clearly loved by the fans, and then shitting all over it. It's a lot of rich story material. There must have been a better way of incorporating that stuff and working it in and not pissing all over the fans. Because Hollywood went through this time period or this phase where they said, screw the age old fans. We want new, fresh blood. We don't need to worry about the old blood because they're fucking old. They're about to die off. They've been around for 40, 50 years. We need new people. So let's move on to Star Trek. So Star Trek, if we just look at the film franchise, you started with the original series cast, the Kirk and Spock and McCoy cast, and they went on to produce 6 films. And over the course of those 6 films, the original film, Star Trek The Motion Picture, started out as it was supposed to be a television pilot. Paramount was going to launch a new television network, and they were going to use the new Star Trek series as a flagship for that network. Now they went on to do that later down the road. I believe it was either with Voyager or Enterprise. And one of you guys can tell me which series did that. I believe it was Voyager. So that was years later. That was like a couple decades later when they actually did that. So they're developing Star Trek Phase 2, which was going to be a new television series. They were bringing back the whole original cast, and this is essentially 10 plus years after the original series. And the only actor that wasn't going to reprise his role was going to be Leonard Nimoy. He wasn't going to come back as Spock, so they brought in another dude to play a Vulcan in place of Spock. And then, as this project is being developed, 20th Century Fox releases Star Wars, the first Star Wars film, which becomes a huge blockbuster, just blows everything out of the fucking water. A lot of people didn't want to touch Star Wars because it was sci-fi, and sci-fi was B-flicks. You get shit like Killer Tomatoes and all these silly ass, sci-fi B-movie flicks. And so nobody wanted to touch it because, they didn't want a B movie. Like, what the hell? 20th Century Fox releases it. Star Wars becomes this huge, mega success. Massive franchise grew out of it. You got cereal and action figures and pajamas and bed sheets and all sorts of merchandise and memorabilia came out of that thing. Millions of dollars, lines around the block. And so all the other studios are freaking out, losing their fucking minds, trying to figure out, okay, what do we have that's like that? Paramount looks at Star Trek and says, this is our Star Wars. Let's make it into a movie and not a television series. And so that's how the film franchise was born. And so instead of doing a television series, they invested in making films. The cast would reprise their roles every couple. You spend a few months making the film. You shoot it, and then you got post production, and then you gotta market it and distribute it, and then it debuts, and you have all the aftermath of that. So that happens over the course of a year and something. That's a year and a half, up to 2 year investment. So that's just as much almost as making a television series. So the cast comes in, they do their shtick, they put the movie together, they release the movie, and then you take some time off, and then you come back and you do the sequel. And so that's how the Star Trek film series went. Well, after a few films, they decided that they needed a television series, and so Next Generation came out with its series. which was a slight departure from the original cast. But at this point, you had an ongoing television series, and then the film series was still going with the original cast. The film series with the original cast stops at the sixth film, Undiscovered Country, and then the Next Generation stops its show and picks up the baton for the film series. And the Next Generation cast does 4 films. Now, the Next Generation cast, the 4 films have a tendency to just kind of take a bit of a dip as the series goes on. And so we get to the 4th Next Generation film, which is the 10th Star Trek film, which does really bad at the box office. It's a very bad film. Star Trek Nemesis, very bad. The Star Trek film franchise takes a bit of a break, and it's still a cash cow for Paramount. So they're trying to figure out, okay, what are we gonna do? We got to do something about this. So they reboot it. And so they recast the original cast, and events take place that launch the series into an alternate timeline. So Star Trek 11, 12, and 13 star the Chris Pine cast. Chris Pine stars as Captain Kirk instead of William Shatner, and it's a younger cast because it's all about how they came to be on the Enterprise, and everything's a little bit different because we're in the Kelvin timeline, not the original Prime timeline. And so that's where they started making errors with Star Trek. So it's like, there's just a lot of Star Trek history here. There's just a lot of material out there. And this is just too much. There's too much research. Throw it out. Let's throw it into the Kelvin timeline. And let's just reboot from fresh. We have a whole new frontier where we can do whatever the frick we want with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And of course, your fan base, has a bit of a problem with it. They're like, well, Spock doesn't hook up with Uhura. Khan Noonien Singh isn't some white dude. What the hell? The Klingons don't look like that. What are you doing, Paramount? You're fucking up everything. And so, of course, they started doing television shows. And a lot of it with Star Trek had to do with the legal rights. There's this whole legal entanglement stuff going on where the film rights were separated from the television rights. So the Klingons couldn't look like the Klingons in the movies because the movies didn't have the television right. It was just a mess. And so it caused all sorts of chaos with the fans. They continued the trend with Star Trek Picard. And they started that project off saying, we don't want shit to do. We don't want to have anything to connect with all of those Next Generation characters. We're just going to focus on Picard and we're going to ignore everybody else. So the first 2 seasons of that are fans going, what the fuck are you doing? Where's Riker? Where's Troy? Where's Crusher? Where's Geordi? Where's Worf? How could you ignore all those characters? So then you get to season 3 of Picard and you put all those characters in and everybody fucking loves it. It's the best season of the series, and it ends up being the last season of the series. But then it's like, oh, well, I guess that's what we should have done all along. Like, oops. Like this whole thing of subverting expectations and seeing what your fan base, seeing what the consumers want and what the consumers like, but then making this decision that, oh, yeah, let's not give that to them. Let's do something fresh and artsy. And then getting shocked when the product fails, like consistently, continually. Sony's doing it too with Spider-Man. How are you doing Spider-Man movies? You know, I've said this in another in the Madam Web review that I did. How can you do Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man? Makes absolutely no sense. And you're losing millions of dollars. You are tanking that franchise. And you're sitting there and you're not understanding why. People are getting fired left and right. Whole wings of studios are getting shut down because these people just don't seem to get marketing 101. We're in 2024 and you have access to consumer data, like real time consumer data. You jump onto social media. There's all these groups for Star Wars. There's all these groups for Star Trek. There's all these web pages. The fans are yelling at you and telling you, this is exactly what I want. This is what you should be doing. I will rip my pockets out giving you money to support you. But when you go and you decide to do the exact opposite of what the consumers are telling you, and then you want to act like, oh my God, they don't like Star Wars anymore. They don't like Star Trek. I don't know why. It's your fault. It's the studio's fault. It's the filmmaker's fault because there's absolutely no excuse, no reason why you can't go look on Facebook. You can't look on, I don't call it X. You can't look on Twitter if you even bother looking there. You can't look on Instagram and Pinterest and look on all the Star Trek and Star Wars pages and then act like you don't know why the movie going audience, why the consumers don't want this stuff anymore. They're telling you what they want. They're voting with their dollars when you give them what they don't want. Now, yes, be creative, be fresh, but you still have to work within a framework defined by your consumer base. Because the consumer base is there for you and you are there for the consumer base. It's a symbiotic relationship. And if you decide you want to take away from that, well, you take the risk. Anyway, this is a defuck moment. And I just wanted to talk about issues with Hollywood and their storytelling. It's just a general post, not specific to any film. Just speaking to the dilemma of ignoring the necessity to get the story right, to appreciate your audience, your consumer base. Strive for being creative and fresh within a specified framework. Rant over. Thank you for listening to Mike Jing's Reviews. Ta-ta for now.